Rich Rodriguez is back at West Virginia. Now, you are old enough to remember the entire way that went down in '07 and is the Alabama coach for 5 nanoseconds, and then he backs out of that, and then he ends up at Michigan, and you're wondering, like, ooh, is this going to work? Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. And then he's all over the place over the next decade and a half, and he's back. It's 2024. He's still got a ton of juice left. He's still a winner. I'm very happy that this is happening. It could fundamentally alter the landscape of the Big 12 because with Rich Rodriguez coming in, you also, I mean, let's be real now, you got your Ken Kendricks of the world, you got your Pat McAfees of the world who could, in the snap of a finger, make the West Virginia NIL package the most lucrative in the Big 12. So we're not just talking about getting a legendary name back here. We're talking about potentially putting a different kind of gas in the tank at West Virginia. I obviously think this is a win because it was already a win there the first go-around, and he really hasn't stopped winning, most recently at Jacksonville State. I think it's going to work. Do you think it's going to work? If so, why?
Yes, he's just a great football coach, and he is best, I think, when he is attempting to do more with less, and that means not just elite talent or expected to go grab elite talent. I think he's got a good core of assistants around him that understand how he's going to run a football team. He's been able to sort of alter, I think, his approach just enough to fit in with today's kids. But he's going to win. And how much, I don't know the extent of it, but I do think that, I mean, you just said something interesting, alter the landscape of the Big 12. How much more can we alter that landscape, by the way?
Yeah.
I mean, every program has something going for it that feels like could make it not only unique, but could make it great at times. I'm excited about it. I know Rich Rod, covered him a little bit here in Jacksonville State in the state of Alabama, and I've known him for a long time. I know some people that he's coached with for a while. I was talking to McAfee at the SEC championship game. He was saying he wanted him back, said it's what it needed to be. So I think that fan base will get behind it. Like you said, the NIL could take a massive boost in a heartbeat, and I think he already knows the landscape. He knows the administration. He knows how to win. I think it's a great hire, and I think Rich Rod is going to do really well.
Think about the athlete profile and recruiting on the East Coast all the way down to Florida. Okay, there's a caliber of kid that the biggest programs in the SEC are going to fight over. There is an East Coast, Virginia's, up in Jersey. There's a caliber of athlete there. Your Michigans and Ohio States and Penn States to a certain extent have always gotten priority over. But that leaves hundreds and hundreds of like P4 level athletes all up and down the eastern seaboard and in Florida per year that are like prime potential gets for someone. And it has been UCF and then to a certain extent Cincinnati. I'm talking about Big 12 teams. So I'm just thinking like this. I'm thinking about raw talent acquisition. If West Virginia is like a major NIL player within the context and framework of the Big 12, who are you competing against? You're competing against Cincinnati, which is, inland a little bit, and then you're competing against UCF, which by all accounts has a long way to go to get their internal NIL infrastructure up to speed. Now, they've got the advantage of being parked in Florida, but dude, I think West Virginia could like really make some hay in talent acquisition just by having the right people sort of look in their pocket and say, oh, I didn't know that was there. Here you go.
I think where there's a lot of new advantages for different coaches. We could talk about some with Dan Mullen. We could talk about some with Belichick. I think some of the newer advantages for a guy like Rich Rod, like I remember when Terry Bowden was at Akron and he was getting these kids from Fort Lauderdale. And I always knew that he had those relationships down there. I mean, you talk about the Dillard kids that he brought to Auburn and, Frank Sanders and James Bostic and those guys, and just kept bringing like Martavius Houston. But the relationships that he had stayed wherever he went. And I think that's where someone like Rich Rod right now can benefit more than people will give him credit for, Josh, is not going to that high school to get that young man immediately. Because as you stated, if Penn State, Ohio State, maybe even Virginia Tech or Tennessee want that player, probably going to get him for NIL reasons and for historical reasons, facilities, whatever else. But where that benefits you now is how many players stay at the same place 4 years? Not a ton. And he's got the relationships with other college coaches. He's already got those high school relationships. He'll have recruited a lot of those guys. So I actually think he might be able to have more success through the portal with kids wanting to get back close to home or understanding it didn't work somewhere the first time, or maybe needed to get into a better fit scheme-wise than they thought they needed to coming out of high school because they see they don't work in this pro-style system or they don't work in the air raid, and they need to get something that's a little bit more better fit for what they're suited to do. That's where I think Rich Rod could end up having some major wins.